bond issuance was approved by County Council at the request of the new owner. That was done in April of 2006. At the same time, a new tax district was also created. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a piece of property that I had zoned in 2004. Excuse me, I had a property zoned in 2002 with an improvement district that was approved in 2004. And by April of 2006, the new owner had changed all of that, all of the land use. And you go back and you look at the original zoning, there was the apartments, there was the offices. The plan that we had originally had for this piece of property was going to be that it was for first-time homes. At that time, when we were working on it in 2002 through 2004, Lancaster County was primarily seen as a market for first and second-time home buyers. We see this at Legacy Park and to a certain extent at some of the other subdivisions up there. By the time the market had gotten to where it was in 2006, the new owners believed that this was more appropriate for a higher and more upscale development. They dramatically reduced the density. Can't remember what the number of units was that they have approved, but it was down significantly from the 2,300. It still had commercial, it did not have any apartments, and did not have any offices. All of this was done through public hearing at the approval of County Council. 19, we sold them an additional piece of land that we had under contract. Additional readings and hearings before County Council in 2006. There's a development agreement in June of 2006, and then the declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions are recorded in 2006. One of the things you'll see, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is that Stanley Smith has accused me somehow magically of not entering into a development agreement. In fact, Mr. Smith says, and this is on Mr. Spratt's website if you want to go find Mr. Smith's letter. Somehow, it says, to really understand what went wrong, you have to understand development agreements work. When a developer like Mulvaney wants to develop a piece of property and wants the county to approve bonds, the county makes that developer sign a development agreement so that he doesn't come, so that if he doesn't come through on his promises, then we can hold him accountable. The county, to approve the bonds for him, the county makes that developer sign an agreement. That is a false statement. That is a false statement. Somehow Mulvaney was able to get through this process without signing a development agreement. That is an innuendo. The reason that we did not sign any development agreement is that by law the development agreement is not signed until the bonds are issued. We never issued any bonds while I owned this piece of property. Only the new owner issued those bonds, and that development agreement was properly signed by the new owner and exists today on record at the Lancaster County Register of Deeds. The permits to do the work were not pulled until just July and November of 2006. We never moved a piece of dirt on this piece of property. Those pictures that you see in the ad are not our work. You don't get that impression from watching that ad. It is another innuendo that Mr. Spratt is offering to the public. We did not do any of that work. The bridge that you see that is half built, the building that you see that is partially damaged, the graffiti that you see on the skate park, we did not do any of that work because we did not own the property. This was not our development. This is a piece of property that we sold to a new owner. Someone asked me about GS Carolina. I think if you see in the ad, there's a comment that during this same period of time, supposedly, the same people that I was talking to County Council about were defaulting on loans someplace else. And if you look very closely at the ad, as I can assure you we have, what you'll see is a reference to a Triangle Business Journal article, I believe from 2000 and I can't remember what it is. But you can, it's, I don't know if I brought that one or not. That was a development that the Sandler and Sons company had in the Research Triangle Park on a development where IBM had pulled out of a major installation. And it devastated that industrial park. How that's relevant to this, I have absolutely no idea. Our contact at this time was with GS Carolina. In fact, Tom Scott from GS Carolina, I believe, was a gentleman who came before council those 17 times. GS Carolina is still around. In fact, this is from last month in the Charlotte Business Journal. Developer's largest proposal still viable. Remember that piece I told you about? They had bought about the same time that they bought this piece from us, the piece up in Iredell County. They're still there, and they're still in business. How, I have no idea, given the state of the market. But this was a legitimate and still is a legitimate entity. Has the development gone awry? Absolutely. There's no question about it. You can go to every single town and county in this nation right now and see real estate developments. This is your partner, if you want to talk to her. Jenny? Hang on a second, here's your young man.
Thank you.
You will. Hey, I know she's lost or something.
Huh? They won't let her in.
Oh, if only it were so easy with the press, right, Matt?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You know, you can go through the ad, you can go through the website, you can go through Mr. Smith's letter, and it's one half truth and one innuendo after another. You know, I'm happy to sit down and lay it out for you folks and show you exactly what happened. I am not. There is nothing, absolutely nothing here for me to hide. This is getting a little out of control, by the way. We were at an event with Mr. Spratt on Friday night when a volunteer of ours asked one of your volunteers about the comments that Mr. Carter made. And the response back from one of Mr. Spratt's volunteers was, "We know you paid off that councilman." It's the type of thing that has to stop in this race. There's a lot more important things in this race. This is real. People's reputations are real. This is what I do or used to do for a living when the market existed. This is my life. This is my family. This is how I provide for my wife and my children. And I'm being accused of some of the most heinous things you can do in business, which is to be unethical. Now other folks are starting to get dragged into it just for political advantage. And I think that it's wrong. I really do. And I'm more than happy to sit down and show folks what the truth is so that we can get back to talking about what I think people really care about in this election. So I don't know if you want me to take questions from the press or if you want to do it one-on-one. What do you want to do? You guys got any questions? Or? Yes, John.
Mick, as a state senator, is there anything at all that you can do now knowing everything that has happened there, but the land is still horrible right now? Is there anything that you can do to at least help these people out there that are hurting so bad, even though you don't own it anymore?
Sure, and I think the county is trying to do that. The difficulty is that in this environment, and this speaks to the larger difficulties that we're having as a nation right now. These bonds were sold, by the way. Some folks would give you the impression that Granny and Grandpa bought these bonds. I believe the bonds were underwritten by Bank of America, and I believe most of them were purchased by another division of Bank of America. It's a huge business, by the way. Special Assessment District Financing is a several billion-dollar business nationwide. These transactions are handled by very sophisticated companies. Most of them are owned by large financial institutions, retirement funds, and those types of things. And the difficulty is that those folks don't know how the federal government is going to handle property that they foreclose on. It's part of the difficulty that we're having in the real estate industry generally. Ordinarily, by now in a recession, all of the toxic assets would have been flushed through the system, put back on the market, sold at a discount, moved back into the private sector, and that's simply not happening in this environment. So the county, I know, has been trying to try and press the issue up there. The banks haven't even foreclosed on this piece of property yet, as I understand it. There is a lawyer representing the bondholders in Florida. I don't remember the gentleman's name off the top of my head. But the difficulty is really systemic right now because of the regulations on banks that is not allowing this property to flush through. In a typical recession, this piece of property would have been foreclosed on and then resold to another developer who would have then continued the development. I know the county had looked at for a while on condemning this property. The county, in theory, could take this property, the EMS station, the parks, the cabana, for $1 because they're entitled to it. This property is supposed to be deeded to the county. The reason it's not been is because of the liens that were filed on this property. So I know that y'all are working on it. At the state level, I don't know what we can do. The law is already there. Foreclosure laws are already there. We cannot make the bank foreclose. And the folks who are in there are in the worst possible situation. But I don't know if there's very little we can do at the state and local level until the federal government gets its act together. Yes, sir.
You got the dates and stuff of all the transactions, but one of the things, if it's the lie that it's said to be,
sure.
How much did it cost you, your family business, your entity,
to
assemble, and how much did it pass for? Not what you made personally, but how much, what was the because amounts are all wrong, then that's another.
Right, and that's a great question. I've seen, you know, when this first started, I supposedly made $30 million. Then in Mr. Stanley Smith's letter, it's $11.2 million, and the TV ad at $7 million. I've never seen any justification for any of those numbers. You know, our business is private. We don't disclose our profits. I can assure you that I own 3.333% of the entity that own this land. So, but I've never seen any justification for those numbers whatsoever. I had guessed, by the way, that what they had done is taken the deed stamps, which you can do, and find out how much you paid for land, and then took the deed stamps and how much you sold for land, and subtracted those two things. But that's the most. That would be like looking at the raw materials on a car and saying what you sold it for, and saying that's your profit. So it's just absurd.
Would you say how much you spent?
I've
The work you did to develop it? The work that you do to get a piece of property ready for zoning, ready for a special assessment district, ready for a sale is considerable. But we never moved a piece of dirt on this piece of property. All of the work that you've seen out there was done by another company long after we had sold it.
Like you mentioned a couple of times that you sold the property. I know that in a lot of, on the blog that's been passed around for a few years now,
Yes.
they have they have audio of you at several council meetings
Yep.
speaking that you were gonna have a partner.
Yep.
And it's over and over again that you're gonna be a partner. You sold the land, so obviously you're not a partner.
Correct. This is not our partner. We had looked on any piece of property. What you're listening to, and by the way, and we're working on this right now, but there's another video that's linked to on your website that we have a copy of now that actually takes audio from a different subdivision and interposes it across the video for Edenmoor. They took audio from a different conversation and put it out there as being related to Edenmoor. But anytime you come back, and we haven't been able to find the video, the audio for this yet. Anytime you do a deal of this size, it's not unusual to go out and look for partners. And in fact, on a multi-use piece of property, we were primarily residential developers. There was a commercial piece when we had it first approved. There was an apartment piece. There was an office piece. We are not office developers. So I told council that, you know, as we're going to go through this, it'd be likely that we bring in partners. What happened was Lawson's Bend approached us for an outright sale. And the reason they did that was they owned the adjoining piece of property over in Union County. You can go over there today. I think it's called Millbridge or Bridge Mill. No, Bridge Mill is here. Millbridge is across the way. And for those of you who follow local developments and so forth, Union County at that time was out of sewer capacity. And they had not obtained enough sewer capacity to finish the development of Millbridge. And they had figured out a way to get sewer into the pump station that was on St. Catherine. So they put those two together and pumped the sewer over into the River Road, Lancaster County thing, which is very similar, by the way, to what they do at, where else did we do that? No, they did it first time. Firethorn. Firethorn is another development that straddles the state line where the sewer comes into the Lancaster County system. So no, this was never a partner, nor was ever held out as a partner. I never went back to these 17 hearings. Did not involve me.
So when you were talking about trying to get the council to consider bonds for infrastructure, and you referred over and over again to a partner that you would have, that was not the current owner. That wasn't the correct audio? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that I've not heard. I've not heard that interposition. I've not heard the allegation that while I was lobbying for the bonds, I was telling them about a partner. If you're hearing that, I've not heard that before. Okay. But if you're hearing that, that would be wrong. The bonds, this property was zoned in 2002, and then the bonds were finally approved in 2004. So